Oh, get out of this place now, and you don't belong here.
Oh my God, did you see what just walked in? Amanda Chole's voice carried across the dining room of Le Chateau Noir, dripping with contempt as she gestured toward the woman in jeans who'd just been seated in her section. Her fellow server, Madison, glanced over and smirked. Yikes. Someone's lost. Did she think this was Applebee's? They didn't bother lowering their voices. The woman, somewhere in her late 30s, dressed in clean but casual jeans, a simple navy blouse and comfortable flats, sat alone at table 12, directly in Amanda's section. She'd pulled out her phone and was scrolling through it, apparently oblivious to the server's commentary. Amanda rolled her eyes dramatically. I swear, some people have no self-awareness. Look at those shoes. Are those from Payless? She grabbed a water glass with barely concealed irritation and approached the table. Instead of placing it down gently as she'd been trained, she let it land with a sharp thunk that sloshed water onto the pristine white tablecloth. The woman looked up, her face burning with humiliation as nearby tables turned to see what had caused the noise. Menu, Amanda said flatly, tossing it onto the table rather than presenting it properly. Thank you, the woman said quietly. Amanda was already walking away, returning to the server station where Madison waited with an amused expression. God, I hate when they let just anyone in here, Amanda muttered, loud enough to be overheard. This is supposed to be an exclusive establishment. What Amanda didn't see was the way the woman's hands trembled slightly as she opened the menu. Or the way her jaw tightened as she absorbed every dismissive word. Or the way the head chef, who just emerged from the kitchen to check on the dining room, froze when he saw her. Chef Antoine's face went pale. He knew that face. He'd known it for 15 years, since the day she'd hired him to help build Le Chateau Noir from an empty storefront into the most celebrated restaurant in the city. He watched Amanda return to the table with barely concealed hostility, watched the way she treated the woman who could end careers with a single word. And Chef Antoine knew, with absolute certainty, that Amanda Chole had just destroyed herself. She had no idea the woman she just insulted could end her career with one word. Hey friend, if you enjoy real gripping revenge stories, please subscribe. It's 1 second for you but a big deal for me. 2 weeks earlier, I received an email that made my blood boil. My name is Isabelle Moreau, and I own Le Chateau Noir, 3 Michelin stars, a waiting list months long, and a reputation built on 15 years of blood, sweat, and sacrifices most people couldn't imagine. I didn't inherit this restaurant. I didn't marry into money. I built it from nothing, starting as a 15-year-old dishwasher at a greasy diner where the owner yelled at me in 2 languages and the line cooks thought grabbing my arm was appropriate. I worked every position in restaurants: dishwasher, prep cook, line cook, expediter, server, bartender, host. I put myself through culinary school working 3 jobs. I saved every penny for 10 years before I could even think about opening my own place. Le Chateau Noir was my dream, not just excellent food, but a place where people felt welcomed, valued, and respected regardless of who they were or what they wore. Excellence without elitism. That was always the vision. So when I opened my anonymous feedback email, a system I'd set up so customers could reach me directly without going through management, and saw the subject line discriminatory treatment at Le Chateau Noir, my stomach dropped. Dear owner, I'm writing to share an experience that left me feeling humiliated and unwelcome at your restaurant. Last Thursday, I took my elderly mother to Le Chateau Noir for her 75th birthday. We'd been saving for months for this special occasion. My mother uses a walker and was dressed comfortably for mobility, a nice sweater and slacks, but nothing fancy. I wore business casual from work. From the moment we arrived, we were treated like we didn't belong. The hostess seated us at the worst table in the restaurant, tucked in the corner near the kitchen door, despite many better tables being empty. Our server barely acknowledged us, took 10 minutes to bring water, didn't offer wine pairings or explain specials, and rushed us through our meal. Meanwhile, we watched wealthy-looking diners at nearby tables receive attentive, warm service. When I politely asked about dessert, our server sighed and said, I suppose, as if we were inconveniencing her by staying. My mother cried in the car afterward. She'd been so excited for this experience, and instead she felt like a burden. We spent over $300 on a meal that came with a side of judgment and disrespect. I don't know if this reflects your restaurant's values, but I thought you should know what's happening in your establishment. A disappointed customer. I read it 3 times, my hands shaking with anger. Then I opened the restaurant's online reviews, something I usually left to my marketing team, and started scrolling. There were hundreds of 5-star reviews praising the food and service. But scattered among them were 1- and 2-star reviews that followed a disturbing pattern. Food was amazing but felt rushed by our server. Table next to us got much more attention and they were dressed much fancier. Hostess seemed reluctant to seat us. We were in jeans after a long day of sightseeing. Made us feel unwelcome. Server was dismissive and rude. Didn't offer wine pairings or explain dishes. Watched her fawn over couple at next table in designer clothes. If you don't look wealthy, don't bother. This place is all about appearances. I'd been so focused on the kitchen, on perfecting dishes and maintaining our Michelin stars, that I'd missed what was happening in my dining room. My restaurant, the place I'd built on the principle that everyone deserves dignity, had apparently become exactly the kind of elitist establishment I despised. The next morning, I called an emergency meeting with my general manager, Todd Brennan. "I've been getting complaints," I said, sliding my tablet across my desk. "Read these." Todd scanned the reviews, his expression carefully neutral. "Too neutral. I'm sure it's just a few isolated incidents," he said dismissively. "Some people are never satisfied, you know. They come to a high-end restaurant and expect to be treated with respect?" I interrupted. "Yes, Todd. That's exactly what they should expect. That's what everyone should expect when they come here." Of course, he said quickly. "I just meant that we get all kinds of customers, and our servers have to prioritize regulars and high-value guests." High-value guests? My voice came out cold. Every guest is high value. That's the point. That's always been the point. Todd shifted uncomfortably. "Look, Isabel, I know you have this whole egalitarian philosophy. But this is a 3-Michelin star restaurant. We have a certain clientele, a certain image to maintain. If we treat everyone exactly the same, regardless of what they can afford or how they present themselves, we maintain the image of a restaurant that values people," I said quietly. "Not their wallets." "Right. Sure." He clearly didn't believe me. "So what do you want to do about these complaints?" "I want to see it for myself." An idea was forming in my mind. "I'm going undercover." Todd laughed, actually laughed. "Undercover? Isabel, you own the place. Everyone knows you. The kitchen staff knows me. Chef Antoine knows me. But when was the last time I was in the dining room during service? The servers turn over every few years. How many of them would actually recognize me out of context, dressed casually?" His smile faded. "You're serious?" "Completely. I'm making a reservation under a different name for Friday night. I'm going to dress casually, jeans, simple top, nothing fancy, and I'm going to see exactly how my staff treats customers they think don't matter." "Isabel, I really don't think." "I don't need you to think, Todd. I need you to do your job. And part of your job is ensuring that every customer receives excellent service, regardless of how they look. If that's not happening, I'm going to find out why." Todd left my office, and I sat there in the silence, remembering. I remembered being 17, working as a server at a mid-range steakhouse, watching my manager fawn over wealthy customers while barely acknowledging families who ordered modestly. I remembered being told to focus on the tables that tip well, and feeling sick about the implication that some customers mattered less than others. I remembered years later, taking my grandmother to a fancy restaurant for her birthday, my grandmother who'd raised me, who'd worked 3 jobs to keep me fed, and watching the server treat her with barely concealed contempt because she wore a house dress and orthopedic shoes. That memory, more than anything, had driven me to create Le Chateau Noir. A place where the food was exceptional, but the humanity was never forgotten. If my staff had forgotten that, if they'd turned my dream into another elitist trap where people were judged by their clothes instead of treated with dignity, then I'd failed at the only thing that really mattered. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Friday evening, I stood in front of my closet, selecting my outfit with the same care I'd once used to choose dishes for our opening menu. Clean, dark-wash jeans. A simple navy blouse. Comfortable leather flats, nice enough to be appropriate, casual enough to be dismissed. Minimal jewelry, small earrings, my mother's old watch, no designer pieces. I pulled my hair into a simple ponytail and kept my makeup natural. Looking in the mirror, I saw who I'd been 15 years ago, a woman who worked hard, dressed practically, and deserved to be treated with respect regardless of her clothes. I drove to Le Chateau Noir in my personal car, a modest sedan, not the luxury vehicle I usually drove to avoid parking downtown, and arrived at 7:30 p.m. for my 7:45 reservation under the name Isabel Martin. The valet looked at my car with barely concealed disappointment. I handed him the keys and a standard tip, noting the way he pocketed it without thanks before turning to greet a Mercedes pulling up behind me with a much warmer smile. Strike one. Inside, the hostess, a young woman named Brittany who'd been hired 6 months ago, gave me a once-over that lasted half a second too long. Her smile, which had been bright and genuine for the couple who'd entered before me, became professional and distant. Good evening. Do you have a reservation? Yes. Martin. Party of one. She checked her tablet, and I saw something flicker across her face. Surprise, maybe, that someone dining alone had bothered to make a reservation at all. Right this way. She led me past the window tables, all empty at this early hour, past the prime seating in the center of the dining room, and tucked me into table 12, a small two-top in the corner, positioned between the kitchen door and the server station. The worst table in the house, reserved for walk-ins and last-minute bookings. Your server will be right with you, Brittany said, already turning away. I settled into my seat and observed. The dining room was beginning to fill, well-dressed couples, groups of business people in expensive suits, a few families whose clothes and jewelry screamed old money. They were seated at the best tables, greeted warmly, given the show seats where they could see and be seen. A couple arrived after me, dressed to the nines. Brittany's face lit up as she seated them at a prime window table that had been empty when she seated me. Strike two. I watched the servers move through the dining room, noting their body language. The way they moved quickly and attentively for some tables, slowly and reluctantly for others. The way they laughed at jokes from wealthy-looking patrons but remained stony-faced with others. And then I saw her, Amanda Chole. I'd seen her file when we'd hired her 8 months ago. 26 years old, beautiful, with 5 years of high-end restaurant experience. Her references had been glowing, excellent with customers, professional, goes above and beyond. She was currently going above and beyond at table 7, where a middle-aged man in an expensive suit was clearly enjoying her attention. She laughed at something he said, touched his shoulder briefly, recited the specials with enthusiasm, and made extensive wine pairing recommendations. Then she turned toward my section, saw me sitting at table 12, and her expression changed completely. The warm smile disappeared. Her posture stiffened. She said something to another server that made them both glance my way and smirk. She picked up a water glass and approached my table with the enthusiasm of someone approaching a root canal. The glass hit the table with enough force to slosh water onto the white tablecloth. I felt my face flush as nearby tables turned to look. Menu, she said flatly, tossing it onto the table. Not good evening. Not welcome to Le Chateau Noir. Not can I get you started with something to drink? Just menu, delivered with the warmth of a parking ticket. Thank you, I said quietly, keeping my voice neutral. She was already walking away. I watched her return to table 7, where Mr. Expensive Suit received a radiant smile and what appeared to be a genuinely engaging conversation about the wine list. She pulled out his chair slightly when he stood to take a phone call. She refilled his water glass before it was half empty. Meanwhile, my water glass, half of it now on the tablecloth, remained at its original level despite being nearly empty. I opened the menu, already knowing every dish by heart, and waited. And waited. 10 minutes passed. Amanda made 2 trips past my table without acknowledging me. She took orders at 2 other tables. She delivered drinks. She chatted with Madison, the other server, at the server station visible from my table. God, I hate when they let just anyone in here, I heard her say, not bothering to lower her voice. This is supposed to be an exclusive establishment. My hands tightened on the menu. Finally, she approached my table with visible reluctance. What do you want? Not are you ready to order? Not can I tell you about our specials? Just what do you want? The kind of phrasing you'd use at a fast food counter, not a 3 Michelin star restaurant where the average dinner cost $200 per person. I'd like to hear about the specials, please, I said politely. She sighed. Seared duck breast with cherry gastrique, pan-roasted halibut with lemon beurre blanc, and dry-aged ribeye with truffle butter. She rattled them off in a monotone, giving me no details about preparation, sourcing, or chef's recommendations. At table 7, she'd spent 5 minutes describing each special in mouth-watering detail. "And could I see the wine list, please? We have house red and house white. Which do you want?" At table 7, she brought the full wine list, made pairing suggestions, discussed regions and varietals. To me, she offered house red or house white, as if I couldn't possibly appreciate or afford anything better. "I'd like to see the full wine list, please." Another sigh. "Fine. 1 second." She walked away, and I watched her stop at the server station to complain to Madison. "She wants the wine list. Like she's going to order anything more expensive than the house poor." Madison laughed. "Good luck getting a decent tip from that table." Amanda returned with the wine list and literally dropped it on the table. "There." I took my time reviewing it, noting her impatience as she shifted from foot to foot. "I'll have the Chassagne Montrachet, please." Her eyebrows rose. That was a $180 bottle. "Really?" "Yes, really. You know that's $180, right?" At no other table would a server question a customer's order or imply they couldn't afford it. "Yes, I'm aware. And I'll start with the duck confit appetizer, followed by the halibut special." She wrote it down without comment and walked away without asking how I'd like the halibut prepared, whether I had any dietary restrictions, or if I'd like still or sparkling water, all questions she'd asked at every other table in her section. I sat back and observed the dining room, watching the stark difference in service unfold around me. The next hour was a masterclass in discriminatory service. My wine arrived 20 minutes after I'd ordered it, so long that I'd started to wonder if Amanda had forgotten entirely. She poured it without ceremony, sloshing it into the glass rather than presenting the bottle for my inspection first, and walked away before I could even taste it to ensure it wasn't corked. At table 7, Mr. Expensive Suit received a wine presentation that included showing him the label, uncorking it at the table, offering him a taste, and waiting for his approval before pouring. My duck confit appetizer arrived 30 minutes after I'd ordered, nearly twice as long as appetizers took at other tables. When Amanda set it down, she didn't describe the dish or the accompaniments. She simply placed it in front of me and left. The duck was cold. Not chilled, as intended for some dishes, but cold in the way food gets when it's been sitting under a heat lamp while the server attends to other tables. I ate it anyway, taking notes mentally on everything I was observing. The service differences were even more egregious than the reviews had suggested. Amanda walked past my table 4 times without checking if I needed anything. My water glass remained empty. When I finally caught her attention, she said, "What?" with undisguised annoyance. "Could I have some water, please?" She grabbed my glass without a word and returned a minute later, setting it down hard enough that water sloshed onto the table again. A busboy, a young man named Luis who I knew had been with us for 2 years, appeared with a cloth to wipe up the spill. "I'm so sorry about that," he said quietly, his accent marking him as one of our immigrant workers. "Can I get you anything else?" "No, thank you. You're very kind." He smiled, and I saw genuine warmth there, the kind of hospitality that should have been standard, not the exception. Before he could leave, Amanda appeared. "I've got this table, Luis. Focus on your own job." She said it with a sharp edge that made him flinch and hurry away. I added that to my mental list: staff intimidation, creating a hostile work environment. My halibut arrived 45 minutes after I'd ordered, the longest ticket time we'd had in years. Like the duck, it was clearly not fresh from the kitchen. The beurre blanc had separated slightly, and the fish had that texture that comes from sitting too long. "Enjoy," Amanda said without looking at me, already turning away. "Excuse me," I said politely. "I think this has been sitting for a while. The fish is overcooked." She turned back, and the look she gave me could have curdled milk. "It's fine." "It's actually not. Could I have it remade, please?" She sighed dramatically, loud enough for nearby tables to hear and look over. "I'll have them remake it, I guess. But it's going to be a while. We're very busy." As she walked away, I heard her mutter to Madison, "Some people just want to complain." Like she even knows what properly cooked halibut tastes like. I sat there, feeling the humiliation that every customer in those online reviews had described. The way small indignities pile up, The cold food, the forgotten water, the sighs and eye rolls, the sense that you're an inconvenience rather than a valued guest. This was my restaurant. I'd spent 15 years building it, and this is what it had become. 20 minutes later, my remade halibut arrived. Amanda dropped it onto the table without comment. This one was properly cooked, but she'd already moved on to fawning over a new table, a group of 4 in designer clothes who'd just been seated. I ate slowly, observing everything. The way certain servers, including Amanda, clustered around wealthy-looking tables while avoiding others. The way the manager, Todd, circulated through the dining room but only stopped to chat with the right kind of customers. When I was 3/4 through my halibut, Amanda appeared with my check. Not would you like to see our dessert menu? Not can I get you coffee or an after-dinner drink? Just the check, dropped onto my table while I was still actively eating. The message was clear: leave. You're taking up space that could go to a better customer. I looked at the check, then up at Amanda. I'd like to see the dessert menu, please. Her jaw tightened. We're pretty busy. Don't you think you should let other customers have the table? A hush fell over the nearby tables. Other diners had been watching the poor service with increasing discomfort, and this comment, openly telling a customer to leave, crossed a line even they couldn't ignore. I'm still dining, I said calmly. I'd like dessert, please. For a moment, I thought she might actually argue. But she grabbed the check off the table with a sharp motion and stalked away. At the server station, her voice carried clearly across the dining room, some people don't know when they're not wanted. Madison laughed. Maybe she'll take the hint eventually. A woman at the next table, an elegant older woman in a designer dress, leaned over slightly. Your server seems stressed, she said diplomatically. Only with certain customers, I replied, matching her tone. She looked uncomfortable and returned to her meal, but I noticed she was now watching Amanda with a critical eye. Her companion, a distinguished-looking man in an expensive suit, had his phone out and appeared to be recording. Good. Let the evidence pile up. Amanda returned with the dessert menu and quite literally dropped it on the table from a height. The small leather folder hit the table with a slap, and my chocolate soufflé, artfully plated, slid slightly, breaking the delicate garnish. Oops, Amanda said with zero remorse. Could I have a napkin to clean this up, please? Maybe if you weren't so clumsy, she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Gasps. Actual gasps from other diners. The elegant woman's companion was definitely recording now, his phone held at an angle that captured Amanda's face clearly. Amanda walked away without bringing napkins. Luis, the busboy, appeared within seconds with a cloth, cleaning up the spill with an apologetic expression. Thank you, Luis, I said warmly. You've been wonderful tonight. His face lit up. Thank you, ma'am. I try to treat all our guests well. I can tell. That's exactly how it should be. As he left, I heard Amanda snap at him, stop hovering around my tables. You're making them uncomfortable. Luis hurried away, and Amanda returned to the server station, where she and Madison engaged in a conversation that was clearly about me, punctuated by rolls and gestures in my direction. I took my time with dessert, savoring each bite of the soufflé that my pastry chef had spent years perfecting. Around me, the dining room had grown quieter. Other servers were noticing the attention Amanda's behavior was drawing. A few looked nervous, as if realizing they might be implicated. Todd, the manager, finally appeared at my table. He'd clearly been informed of a problem but approached with the energy of someone hoping to smooth things over quickly. Good evening. I understand there's been some concern about your service tonight. That's one way to put it, I said calmly. Amanda materialized beside him, her expression defensive. She's been difficult all night, she said, not to me but to Todd. Complaining about the food, demanding things, taking up the table for hours. I've been here 90 minutes, I said quietly. The average time for a 3-course meal in a fine dining establishment. And my only complaint was that my halibut was cold, which it was. Maybe she's just not used to places like this, Amanda said, her voice dripping with condescension. Todd looked uncomfortable. I'm sure we can resolve this. Maybe try Applebee's next time, Amanda interrupted, her voice carrying across the now silent dining room. More your speed. The elegant woman at the next table gasped. Her companion's phone was definitely recording, and he looked shocked by what he was hearing. Actually, I said, setting down my fork and looking directly at Todd, maybe you should ask yourself, do you know who I am? Todd looked at me more carefully, and I watched the exact moment recognition dawned. His face went from mild concern to absolute horror in the space of a heartbeat. Oh my God, he whispered. Isabel. Amanda frowned, not understanding. Who's Isabel? I'm Isabel, I said calmly, standing up from my table. Isabel Moreau. I own this restaurant. The silence that fell over the dining room was absolute. Every conversation stopped. Every fork paused mid-air. Every eye turned toward table 12. Amanda's face went through a fascinating progression, confusion, then disbelief, then slowly, horribly, comprehension. That's not, you can't, she stammered. Todd had gone pale. Isabel, I can explain. Can you? I kept my voice level, professional. Can you explain why I was seated at the worst table in the house despite making a reservation? Why I was ignored for 10 minutes before anyone took my order? Why I received cold food twice? Why I was questioned about ordering wine? Why my server made discriminatory comments about my appearance and told me to go to Applebee's? I didn't know. Amanda said desperately. How was I supposed to know? You weren't supposed to know, I said, and my voice was quiet but carried clearly across the silent dining room. That's exactly the point. You were supposed to treat every customer with respect, regardless of whether you knew who they were, regardless of what they wore or what they looked like. But I treat customers according to what they order and how they present themselves, I finished for her, quoting her own words back to her. Yes, I heard you say that to Todd. And that, Amanda, is exactly the problem. That is exactly what all those online reviews were complaining about. That is exactly why I'm standing here in jeans, having just experienced the worst service I've seen in 15 years. Madison, the other server, had backed away from the server station, trying to disappear. But several other servers were frozen in place, looking terrified. You just demonstrated, I continued, that everything in those complaint emails was true. That my staff judges customers based on their appearance. That exclusive has become code for exclusionary. That we've forgotten the single most important principle this restaurant was built on: everyone deserves dignity. From the kitchen, I saw Chef Antoine emerge, his face grave. He'd known this was coming, had probably been watching through the kitchen window. Now he positioned himself where the other servers could see him, his arms crossed, his expression making it clear whose side he was on. The elegant woman at the next table spoke up. I've been filming, she said, holding up her phone. The whole thing. The way your server treated you was appalling. Her companion nodded. I'm Roger Winters. I write for the Tribune's food section. He held up his phone as well. I've documented everything. Amanda's face had gone from pale to red. This isn't fair. You set me up. You came in here looking like what? I asked quietly. Like a regular person? Like someone who works for a living? Like someone who saved up for a nice meal? What exactly is wrong with how I look, Amanda? She opened her mouth, then closed it, realizing there was no good answer. Let me tell you something, I said, and now I addressed the entire dining room, the other servers, the customers, everyone. I started working in restaurants when I was 15. I was a dishwasher. I wore second-hand clothes and shoes with holes in them because I was putting every penny toward helping my grandmother pay rent. I worked my way through every single position in this industry, and I experienced discrimination every step of the way. I saw Luis, the busboy, watching me with wide eyes. I opened Le Chateau Noir with one goal: to prove that you could have exceptional food and service without elitism, without judgment, without treating people like they're worth less because they don't wear designer labels. And somehow, while I was focused on Michelin stars and perfect plates, my dining room became exactly what I never wanted it to be. I turned back to Amanda. You're fired. Effective immediately. Collect your things and leave. You can't, I have bills, I need this job. Every customer you mistreated tonight had bills too, I said quietly. They needed to be treated with dignity, and you denied them that. You don't get to claim victimhood now. Todd stepped forward, his face desperate. Isabel, please, I can fix this. You're on probation, Todd. I told you about these complaints. I told you to address them. Instead, you told me that we needed to prioritize high-value guests. This is on you as much as her. I looked around at the other servers, seeing fear and shame on many faces. Anyone else who has been treating customers this way, consider this your only warning. The culture changes tonight. Luis, I gestured to the busboy, who looked startled, you're promoted to server. Full salary, full benefits, effective immediately. You're the only person who treated me with consistent respect tonight. Luis's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. Thank you so much. Don't thank me. You earned it by doing what everyone here should have been doing all along, treating people like people. I turned back to Amanda, who was crying now, her mascara running. Security will escort you out. You have 10 minutes to collect your personal items. Please, she begged. I'm sorry. I didn't mean. You did mean it. That's the problem. You meant every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every instance of deliberately poor service. You thought you could get away with it because you assumed I was powerless. But even if I had been just a regular customer in jeans, your behavior would have been unacceptable. The difference is that now there are actual consequences. As security arrived to escort Amanda out, still crying, still trying to apologize, still not understanding that the apology meant nothing without genuine remorse, I addressed the dining room one final time. To all our guests tonight, I apologize for what you witnessed. This is not the restaurant I built, and it's not the restaurant we will be going forward. Anyone who received subpar service tonight, your meal is on the house. And I'd appreciate if anyone who witnessed this would be willing to speak with me later about what they observed. Roger Winters, the food critic, nodded. I'd be happy to. And I'll be writing about this. But I think. He looked around the dining room. I think it might be a positive piece. About accountability and change. I hope so, I said. Because change starts tonight. The dining room remained in shocked silence as security escorted Amanda toward the kitchen exit. She was sobbing now, her face blotchy and ruined, mascara streaming down her cheeks. Please, she kept saying. Please, I'm sorry. I need this job. I have rent. I have car payments. Please give me another chance. I stood firm, my voice calm but unyielding. Every customer you mistreated had bills to pay too. They deserved dignity, and you denied them that. The answer is no. Other servers watched in frozen horror as one of their own was marched out. Madison, who'd been laughing at Amanda's comments all night, had disappeared into the kitchen, probably hoping to avoid my attention. She wouldn't be that lucky. Madison Ashford, I called out. You're also terminated. Tonight. She emerged from the kitchen, her face pale. But I wasn't the one serving. You laughed. You participated. You contributed to a culture where discriminating against customers was acceptable, even funny. You're done. Madison's mouth opened and closed like a fish. This is unfair. I didn't do anything wrong. Get your things. Now. As both women were escorted out, I turned to Chef Antoine. Can we handle service with reduced front-of-house staff? Absolutely, he said firmly. I'll call in off-duty servers who actually know how to treat people with respect. Good. Do it. I looked at Todd, who'd been standing there looking like he wanted to disappear. Your turn. My office. Now. The walk from the dining room to my office was silent. I could feel every eye on us, could sense the fear radiating from the remaining staff. Good. They should be scared. They should understand that things were about to change dramatically. In my office, Todd started talking before I'd even closed the door. Isabel, I swear, I had no idea it was this bad. I mean, I knew some servers were a bit selective about their attention, but I didn't realize. You didn't realize because you didn't want to know, I interrupted. I told you about the complaints 2 weeks ago. I told you to investigate. Instead, you gave me some line about maintaining standards and prioritizing regulars. You enabled this, Todd. I was trying to maximize revenue. The servers who focus on high tipping tables bring in more money for the restaurant. At what cost? I asked quietly. At the cost of our values? Our reputation? Our soul? Do you even remember why I opened this restaurant? He looked down. To prove that fine dining could be accessible. To prove that excellence and inclusivity aren't mutually exclusive, I corrected. To show that you can have the best food, the best service, and still treat every human being who walks through that door with dignity and respect. And you turned it into exactly the kind of elitist trap I spent 15 years trying to avoid. What do you want me to do? I want you on probation. 3 months. You're going to personally oversee the complete restructuring of our front-of-house culture. You're going to implement new training programs. You're going to establish an anonymous feedback system where staff can report discrimination. You're going to conduct random checks to ensure service standards are consistent across all tables. And if I see even one more complaint about discriminatory treatment, you're done. Understood. He nodded miserably. Understood. Now get out of my office and start making calls. We need more servers tonight, and they need to be people who understand what this restaurant is really about. After Todd left, I sat at my desk and took a deep breath. Then I pulled out my phone and started going through the video Roger Winters had sent me while I'd been talking to Todd. It was all there. Every dismissive comment, every eye roll, every instance of Amanda treating me like I was beneath her. The video of her literally dropping the dessert plate. Her comment about Applebee's. The look on her face when she realized who I was. This would go viral. I knew that. The question was whether I wanted to be part of that story or try to keep it quiet. I thought about all the customers who'd written those complaint emails and reviews. All the people who'd saved up for a special meal and been made to feel small. All the families and regular people who'd been judged and found wanting by servers who'd forgotten that they too were service workers, not the elite. I downloaded the video and posted it to Le Chateau Noir's official social media accounts with a simple caption. Tonight I went undercover in my own restaurant to investigate complaints about discriminatory service. What I found was unacceptable. 2 servers have been terminated. Our management is on probation. We're implementing immediate changes to ensure that every customer receives the excellent service they deserve, regardless of their appearance or what they order. Excellence should never come with elitism. We forgot that. We won't forget again. Isabel Moreau, owner. I hit post and watched it go live. Within minutes, comments started flooding in. Back in the dining room, I found Luis setting up his new section, his face still showing disbelief at his promotion. I pulled him aside. Luis, I need to ask you something. Have you witnessed other servers treating customers differently based on how they look? He hesitated, clearly torn between loyalty to his co-workers and honesty. You won't get anyone in trouble for telling the truth, I assured him. But I need to know the extent of the problem. It happens a lot, he admitted quietly. Amanda was the worst, but others do it too. They call certain tables throwaways, customers they don't think will tip well. They give bad tables, slow service, don't offer specials or wine. They save their energy for the customers who look rich. My stomach turned. Throwaways. They actually call them that. He nodded. I've tried to help when I can. Refill water, clear plates, smile. But servers don't like it when I interfere. They say I'm overstepping. You weren't overstepping. You were doing exactly what everyone here should be doing. From now on, that's the standard. Anyone who doesn't meet it can find another restaurant. I spent the next hour personally visiting every table in the dining room, apologizing for the disruption, explaining what had happened and why, and comping meals for everyone who'd been there to witness it. Most customers were understanding, even supportive. The elegant woman who'd been sitting near me introduced herself as Victoria Ashford, no relation to Madison thankfully, and told me she'd been bringing her family to Le Chateau Noir for 5 years. I'm ashamed to say I never noticed the discrimination before, she admitted. I'm always well dressed, so I received excellent service. I never thought about whether others were getting the same treatment. Watching what happened to you tonight was eye-opening. I'll be much more observant going forward. Thank you, I said. That's all any of us can do, pay attention and speak up when we see something wrong. Roger Winters, the food critic, asked for a formal interview. I want to write about this. Not as an exposé, but as a piece about accountability and change in the restaurant industry. Would you be willing to talk about your background? About why this matters so much to you? Absolutely, I I said. In fact, I think it's time I shared that story more widely. By the time service ended at midnight, the social media post had been shared 50,000 times. Comments ranged from outrage at Amanda's behavior to praise for my response to stories from other people who'd experienced similar discrimination in restaurants and retail. The video was going viral. By morning, the video had been viewed over 5 million times. I woke to hundreds of notifications on my phone, emails, social media messages, news outlets requesting interviews. Hashtag entitled Waitress was trending on Twitter. Hashtag Le Chateau Noir was trending on Instagram. The video Roger Winters had captured, showing Amanda's dismissive service, her cruel comments, and the moment she realized she'd just insulted her boss, had been picked up by news outlets, food blogs, and social media influencers across the country. And people had done what the internet does best: they'd identified Amanda. Within hours, social media detectives had found her Instagram account, her Facebook, her LinkedIn. They'd screenshot everything before she could make it private or delete it. And what they found was a pattern of elitist behavior that went far beyond one bad night. Her Instagram was full of photos where she posed in designer knockoffs with captions like "living my best luxury life," and "some people are just born with taste." There were posts complaining about having to serve basic people who don't know how to appreciate fine dining. Screenshots of her texts to friends about customers: "Old lady in orthopedic shoes at my table, kill me now. Table of college kids split a bottle of house wine, waste of my time. Why do poor people even come to expensive restaurants?" The internet tore her apart. Food service workers shared their own stories of discrimination, both as workers forced to treat customers differently and as customers who'd been judged for their appearance. The conversation exploded into a broader discussion about classism in fine dining, the treatment of service workers, and the toxic culture in high-end restaurants. Major news outlets picked up the story. Good Morning America called for an interview. The Washington Post wanted to do a feature on discrimination in the restaurant industry. Food and Wine magazine requested a piece about my background and philosophy. But it wasn't just positive attention. Some people criticized my decision to fire Amanda publicly, calling it a power trip or virtue signaling. Some suggested I'd set her up, that the undercover operation was entrapment. A few pointed out that I was the owner and could have simply corrected the behavior privately rather than humiliating her in front of customers. I understood their concerns. But I also knew that sometimes change requires dramatic action. Amanda hadn't been having one bad night, she'd been systematically mistreating customers for months, probably longer. And the only reason she was facing consequences was because she'd finally targeted someone who had the power to do something about it. How many other customers had she treated that way? How many people had saved up for a special meal and left feeling humiliated? How many families had crossed Le Chateau Noir off their list because they didn't think they'd be welcomed? The viral video was doing something my private conversations with staff never could have done. It was forcing the entire industry to look at itself and ask uncomfortable questions. Meanwhile, Amanda herself had posted an apology on her Instagram. "I want to apologize for my behavior at Le Chateau Noir. I was having a stressful night and took it out on a customer, which was completely unprofessional. I'm sorry to Ms. Moreau and to anyone I may have offended. I'm working on being a better person and hope people can forgive me." The internet response was swift and brutal. "A stressful night? You were laughing with your co-worker about her appearance. Notice she apologizes to the owner by name but refers to the customer as anyone I may have offended. She still doesn't get it. Working on being a better person? Your entire Instagram shows this is who you are. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry you got caught." Within 24 hours, other stories emerged. Former co-workers from previous restaurants where Amanda had worked shared their experiences. Customers who'd been served by her at other establishments shared their stories of poor service. One particularly damning account came from a woman who'd been a hostess at Amanda's previous restaurant. She once made a family wait 45 minutes for a table even though we had open spots because she said they looked like they'd tip badly. She was always like this. She just finally got caught. The restaurant industry, which operates as a tight-knit community where word travels fast, began quietly blacklisting her. Other high-end restaurants in the city made it clear she wouldn't be welcome on their staff. I received an email from Amanda 3 days after the incident. "Ms. Moreau, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, but I'm begging you to take down the video. My life has been destroyed. I can't get hired anywhere. People recognize me on the street and yell at me. My roommate asked me to move out because the attention was affecting her job. I've had to deactivate all my social media accounts. I understand that what I did was wrong. I understand that I hurt people. But does the punishment really fit the crime? Do I deserve to have my entire life ruined because I was rude to one customer? Please. I'm asking you, human to human. Take down the video. Give me a chance to rebuild my life. Amanda. I stared at that email for a long time. Part of me felt sympathy. I didn't take joy in her suffering, and the internet mob could be brutal. But another part of me thought about all those complaint emails, all those reviews, all those customers who'd been made to feel small. I wrote back, Amanda, you weren't rude to one customer. You were systematically discriminatory toward dozens, probably hundreds of customers over the course of your career. The only difference this time was that the customer had the power to hold you accountable. I won't take down the video. Not because I want to hurt you, but because the conversation it started is important. The restaurant industry needs to look at how we treat customers, how we train staff, how we think about service and dignity. I hope you do rebuild your life. I hope you learn from this. I hope you come to understand that every person deserves respect, regardless of what they look like or what they can afford. But I won't erase the documentation of what happened. The customers you hurt deserved better. They don't get do-overs. Neither do you. Isabel Moreau. I never heard from her again. The week after the incident, I closed Le Chateau Noir for 3 days, the first time we'd been closed for anything other than holidays in 15 years. We used that time for intensive staff training. I brought in hospitality consultants who specialized in inclusive service. I brought in diversity and equity trainers. I brought in former customers who'd experienced discrimination and asked them to share their stories. And I shared my own story, the full version, not the sanitized one from interviews. I was 15 when I started working in restaurants, I told my assembled staff. My grandmother raised me after my mom died and my dad left. We were poor. Not struggling middle-class poor, actually poor. There were times we chose between heating and food. Times I wore shoes with holes because new ones weren't in the budget. I saw some staff members shifting uncomfortably, probably wondering where this was going. I got a job as a dishwasher at a diner called Morty's. The owner was mean, the customers were demanding, and the pay was terrible. But I learned every position. I worked my way up. And along the way, I experienced exactly what happened to me last Friday night, over and over and over. I told them about being 17 and working as a server, being told by my manager to focus on tables that tip well, and realizing he meant well-dressed customers. About being 19 and taking my grandmother to a nice restaurant for her birthday, watching the server treat her with contempt because she wore a house dress and comfortable shoes. About being in my 20s, working at high-end restaurants, watching the industry I loved treat people like they were worthless if they didn't wear the right labels. That's why I opened Le Chateau Noir, I said. Not just to serve great food, but to prove that excellence and inclusivity aren't mutually exclusive. To show that you can have the best service in the city while treating every single person who walks through that door with dignity. And somehow, while I wasn't paying attention, we lost that. I looked around the room at the faces of my staff, some ashamed, some defensive, some genuinely confused about what they'd done wrong. Here's what's changing, I said. Effective immediately, we have a zero-tolerance policy for discriminatory service. I don't care if a customer shows up in a ball gown or gym clothes. I don't care if they order the most expensive bottle on our wine list or just water. Everyone gets the same excellent service. Period. I outlined the new policies. Dress code eliminated for customers. Everyone is welcome exactly as they are. Mystery shopper program. I would personally, or hire someone to, visit the restaurant in various forms of dress. Staff would never know when they were being evaluated. Anonymous feedback system. Customers could report poor treatment directly to me without going through management. Mandatory training. Every staff member, from dishwasher to manager, would complete quarterly training on inclusive service. Tip pooling restructured. Instead of servers keeping their own tips, we'd move to a partial pool system where tips were shared more equitably among front-of-house staff, reducing the incentive to prioritize certain tables. Staff who had participated in discriminatory behavior would be on probation. One more incident and they'd be terminated. Some servers looked angry at these changes, particularly the tip pooling restructure. One raised his hand. Yes, Nathan. With all due respect, some of us work harder than others. If I'm giving better service, shouldn't I be rewarded for that with better tips? You should, I agreed. But better service should mean attentive, knowledgeable, warm service for everyone, not just people you think will tip well. Under the new system, you'll still be rewarded for excellent work. You just won't be rewarded for discriminating against certain customers in favor of others. A few heads nodded, but I could see resistance on several faces. If anyone here fundamentally disagrees with these changes, I said clearly, you're welcome to find employment elsewhere. I won't stop you. But I won't compromise on this. Not anymore. 3 servers handed in their resignations that day. I accepted them without argument and promoted 3 staff members from other positions, including 2 more busboys who'd consistently shown respect to all customers. The local food critic, Roger Winters, published his article the following Sunday. It wasn't what I expected. The Servant's Heart, How One Restaurant Owner is Transforming Fine Dining. Last week, I witnessed something extraordinary at Le Chateau Noir. I watched the owner, Isabelle Moreau, experience discrimination in her own restaurant. I watched her maintain grace and dignity while being treated like she was worthless because of her clothing. And I watched her use that experience not for revenge, but for reform. In the days since, I've learned Moreau's story, how she rose from poverty to build one of the finest restaurants in the country. How she's now using her platform to start a conversation about dignity, respect, and who gets to belong in spaces we label exclusive. This weekend, I returned to Le Chateau Noir. I dressed casually, jeans and a polo shirt. And I received the same exquisite service I'd received countless times in a suit jacket. The food was extraordinary, as always. But more than that, I felt welcomed, valued, seen. That, more than any Michelin star, is what fine dining should be about. The article went viral too. And something beautiful started happening. Customers showed up in jeans, in casual dresses, in comfortable clothes. And they all received the same excellent service. They all felt welcomed. They all left reviews raving not just about the food, but about feeling respected and valued. Our reservation book, which I'd feared might empty out after the controversy, filled up faster than ever. People wanted to experience what the articles were describing, a truly inclusive fine dining experience. And our revenue increased. Turns out, when you treat everyone well, word spreads. When you make people feel valued, they come back. They bring friends. They celebrate special occasions with you because they know they'll be treated with dignity no matter what. The restaurant industry took notice. Other establishments started examining their own cultures. Hospitality organizations invited me to speak about inclusive service. Culinary schools asked me to guest lecture. The conversation had shifted from look at this terrible server, to how do we create better systems? From isn't this drama entertaining? To what are we doing in our own businesses to ensure everyone is treated well? That was what I'd hoped for all along. 6 months after that Friday night, I stood in Le Chateau Noir's dining room during a quiet Tuesday afternoon, watching our staff prepare for evening service. The room looked the same elegant decor, same beautiful table settings, same crystal and silver. But everything felt different. Luis, the busboy I'd promoted to server, was now training 2 new servers on proper service standards. I watched him demonstrate how to present a menu with warmth, how to read customer cues, how to make everyone feel valued regardless of what they ordered. Remember, he was telling them, the person in gym clothes might be a regular who just came from the gym. Or they might be a tourist who's been walking all day. Or they might be someone who saved up for months for this meal. We don't know their story, and it doesn't matter. Everyone deserves our best. Todd, who'd survived his probation period and was genuinely trying to change, was reviewing the week's mystery shopper reports with Chef Antoine. The reports were consistently positive now, showing that our service culture had fundamentally shifted. We had 3 mystery shoppers last week, Todd was saying. 1 in business casual, 1 in workout clothes, 1 in very formal attire. All 3 reported identical levels of excellent service. We're finally getting it right. Chef Antoine smiled. Isabelle would be proud. I am proud, I said, joining them. They both turned, and Todd had the grace to look a bit sheepish. After everything that had happened, our relationship was still rebuilding. But he was genuinely trying, and I appreciated that. The reservations for next month are already completely booked, he told me. We're getting requests to extend our hours. And we've had 3 inquiries from people wanting to franchise the model. No franchising, I said immediately. This isn't a business model to replicate. It's a philosophy. Anyone can do it if they commit to it, but they have to actually commit. They can't just slap inclusive fine dining on their marketing and call it a day. Understood. But the interest is remarkable. What you started here, Isabel, it's becoming a movement. I walked through the dining room, trailing my fingers along the chairbacks, remembering that night 6 months ago. Remembering the humiliation, the anger, the disappointment. Remembering Amanda's face when she realized what she'd done. I'd heard through the industry grapevine that she was working at a chain restaurant in a different city, having changed her name to escape the association with the viral video. Part of me hoped she'd learn something from the experience. Part of me suspected she just resented getting caught. Either way, she was no longer my concern. My concern was the scholarship fund we'd established, the Dignity and Service Scholarship, providing financial support for restaurant workers pursuing culinary education, with preference given to those from low-income backgrounds. My concern was the training program we developed, which other restaurants were now asking permission to use. My concern was the young woman who'd come in last week, dressed in thrift store clothes, clearly nervous, who told me she'd read about Le Chateau Noir and wanted to know if people like her were really welcome here. I'd seated her myself, and she'd cried when she got the same warm service I gave everyone. That was what mattered. The evening service began, and I watched our dining room fill with a beautiful mix of people. A couple celebrating their anniversary in elegant evening wear. A group of friends in jeans and sweaters. A family with young children who were excited but clearly overwhelmed by the formality. A man in a worn sport coat who I suspected had saved up for this meal. All of them were greeted warmly. All of them received attentive service. All of them were treated like they mattered. Because they did. Around 8 p.m., a woman walked in alone, dressed in comfortable jeans and a simple blouse. Our new hostess, trained in the reformed culture, greeted her with a genuine smile. Good evening. Welcome to Le Chateau Noir. Do you have a reservation? I do. Smith, party of 1. Wonderful. Right this way. The hostess led her to a prime window table, not because of what she was wearing, but because it was the best available table for a solo diner. Our server approached with warmth and professionalism, presenting the menu properly, explaining specials, offering wine pairings without any hint of judgment about what she might order. I watched the woman's shoulders relax as she realized she was being treated with respect and care. Watched her smile as the server made genuine conversation. Watched her confidence grow as she ordered and was met with enthusiasm rather than dismissal. That was the moment that made everything worthwhile. My phone buzzed with a notification. Another interview request, this time from a national hospitality magazine, wanting to do a feature on transforming restaurant culture. I'd do it, of course. I'd keep telling this story as long as people wanted to hear it. Because somewhere out there was a 15-year-old kid working their first restaurant job, getting told to prioritize good customers over others. Somewhere out there was a grandmother in orthopedic shoes being treated like she didn't belong in a nice restaurant. Somewhere out there was a person in jeans and sneakers who'd saved up for a special meal and feared they'd be judged for their clothes. If my story could change even one restaurant's culture, if it could spare even one person the humiliation I'd experienced that night, it would be worth it. I thought about Amanda sometimes, wondered if she understood yet what she'd done wrong. The internet had been brutal to her, more brutal than I'd intended or wanted. But that brutality had sparked something important, a national conversation about respect, dignity, and who gets to belong in spaces we label exclusive. The industry was changing. Slowly, unevenly, imperfectly, but changing. More restaurants were eliminating dress codes. More training programs were addressing discrimination. More servers were speaking up when they saw colleagues treating customers poorly. It wasn't enough. It would never be enough until every single person who worked in hospitality understood that service meant serving everyone with dignity. But it was a start. That night, I stayed until close, watching the last customers leave with full stomachs and happy faces. I helped bus tables alongside our staff, something I tried to do regularly now, a reminder that no job in a restaurant is beneath the owner, and every position deserves respect. As I locked up and walked to my car, I passed the spot where I'd stood 6 months ago, waiting for the valet in my casual clothes, watching him give better service to the luxury cars. We had a new valet now. One who greeted every guest warmly, regardless of their vehicle. Small changes. Important changes. I drove home thinking about the email I needed to send to the woman who'd first complained about discriminatory service, the one whose daughter had cried in the car. I wanted to invite her and her mother back, to show them what Le Chateau Noir had become, to thank her for having the courage to speak up. Because that's what change required, people speaking up, even when it was uncomfortable. People holding others accountable, even when it was easier to look away. People insisting that everyone, deserved dignity and respect. I'd spent 15 years building a restaurant. It had taken one undercover visit to remind me that buildings and menus and Michelin stars didn't matter if we'd lost our humanity in the pursuit of them. But we'd found it again. And this time, we wouldn't lose it. Have you ever experienced discrimination in a restaurant or retail setting because of how you were dressed? Have you witnessed someone else being treated poorly based on their appearance? The truth is, classism and discrimination are alive and well in many exclusive spaces. But they don't have to be. Every industry, every business, every person can choose to treat others with dignity and respect regardless of what they look like, what they wear, or what they can afford. Change starts with awareness. It continues with accountability. And it spreads when people refuse to accept that's just how things are as an answer. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next tale. And the next time you're out to eat, pay attention to how staff treats different customers. Speak up if you see discrimination. Tip well when you see excellent service for everyone. Be part of the change. Because everyone, deserves to feel valued.